It was one of those slow, lingering Sundays when the house felt softer, quieter. Sunlight spilled through the windows, catching the dust in a gentle dance as I hummed along to a half-remembered tune. Adam had just returned from his run. I could hear the shower running, its rhythm so familiar I could almost time it by heart. Tidying his desk was second nature: receipts, spare keys, a few old pens. It was comforting, this muscle memory, simple and predictable, until I slid open the bottom drawer and a small pastel envelope slipped out, as if it had been waiting for me. At first, I thought it might be something I'd written long ago, a birthday note, perhaps, tucked away and forgotten. But the handwriting stopped me cold. It wasn't mine. The loops were too graceful, too practiced, too feminine. I don't know why, but a part of me already sensed this wasn't innocent. My hands felt heavy as I opened it. A soft perfume rose from the paper, not mine either. And then the words hit me, each one shattering quietly in my chest. Asterisk, happy birthday, my love. Thank you for being my reason to betray. You make every risk worth it. Asterisk. I read it again, slower this time, hoping perhaps I had misread the cruel poetry of it. My pulse throbbed in my ears. The word betray lingered like smoke. My mouth went dry. I didn't notice the shower stop or the door creak open because in that exact moment, I realized the man I thought I knew better than anyone might have handed his heart to someone else. He walked in then, towel around his waist, smiling as if the universe hadn't shifted. Hey, babe, what are you doing? He asked, casual, unaware I was holding a confession of betrayal in my hands. I looked at him, really looked at the man I'd built a life around, the man whose habits I could recite like prayer. My voice was calm, colder than I expected. I found something, I said. Should I be jealous, or just sick? The smile faltered. His eyes darted to the card. What is that? He asked, though he already knew. I read it aloud, my voice steady despite the tremor beneath. Asterisk, happy birthday, my love. Thank you for being my reason to betray. Asterisk, the words hung between us, like a curse. His shoulders stiffened. It's not what you think, he said. The oldest lie, worn thin from overuse. I held his gaze, searching for something. Remorse, panic, truth. Then tell me what it is, Adam, I said. Because right now, it looks like you've been thanked for cheating. He reached for the card, but I stepped back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. The silence between us said more than any scream could. I walked past him, the card still in my hand, feeling the walls of our home close in, strangers in familiar spaces. I closed the bedroom door behind me and moved down the hall, the sound of his voice chasing me, muted, desperate, full of explanations I didn't want to hear. The card felt heavy, a proof that love had an expiration date I never saw coming. I went straight to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and stared at it under the light. The pastel colors seemed almost cruel now, soft, innocent, pretending not to destroy everything they touched. I stood there for a long time, listening to the faint hum of the fridge, the drip of the faucet, the ordinary sounds of a life that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. There's something surreal about realizing betrayal can exist alongside routine, hiding between grocery lists and laundry baskets. I thought of every Sunday morning, every goodbye kiss, every I love you that now felt rehearsed. The room felt colder, even with the afternoon sun still bright outside. When I finally looked up, I saw our wedding photo on the wall, the one where he was laughing and I was looking at him as if I'd never be disappointed. I took a deep breath, reached out, and turned the frame face down. The soft thud against the table sounded small, but it felt final. As I walked away, one thing crystallized painfully in my mind. Tomorrow, I'd start asking the questions he wasn't ready to answer. That night, dinner sat between us like a battlefield disguised as a meal. The clink of silverware was the only sound for long stretches, and even that seemed too loud. I barely tasted the food. Adam kept glancing at me, his jaw tight, rehearsing excuses behind his teeth. Finally, he spoke, tone light, too controlled. It's from a coworker, he said, a stupid joke. You know how office humor can be. He said it like he was explaining a bad email, not infidelity folded into pink stationery. I didn't look up. So your coworkers write love notes about betrayal? My voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that unnerves men more than shouting ever could. He swallowed hard. She was going through something. It wasn't serious. That word serious almost made me laugh, the way men minimize destruction, as if it's just a misunderstanding between friends. Not serious? I asked. Someone wrote that she betrayed for you. He leaned forward, trying to close the distance, voice low, pleading. I didn't ask her to. I smiled then, a small, cold curve of my lips. No, I said softly. You just gave her a reason to. For the first time that evening, he looked away. The denial cracked slightly, and for a moment, I saw guilt flicker in his eyes like a flame he couldn't put out. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back before his fingers could touch mine. It wasn't anger, it was disgust, as if touching him might make the life feel more real. The air between us thickened, heavy with things left unsaid. You've lied before, Adam, I said quietly. But this time, you wrote it down. He blinked, confused, maybe realizing for the first time that the rules had changed. Words on paper last longer than whispers in the dark. They don't fade. They testify. We sat in silence, seconds stretching thin. He tried to sound patient, reasonable, the tone men use when they think they can still manage a woman's emotions. Nora, please, you're overreacting. That word overreacting landed like a slap. I looked at him and, for the first time, didn't see the man I married. I saw a stranger who'd spent years perfecting the art of pretending. No, I said. I'm finally reacting. He went silent, fork frozen midair, food untouched. I stood, took my plate to the sink, and rinsed it off as if routine could stop me from falling apart. The faucet hissed, drowning out his presence. I didn't trust myself to look back, because if I did, I might have forgiven him, and I wasn't ready to be that kind of fool again. That night, when he finally fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. His breathing was steady, peaceful, the kind of peace only the guilty can manage. The card still rested in the drawer by my nightstand, and every so often my eyes flicked toward it, as if the words could crawl back out on their own. I thought about all the times I defended him, believed in him, chosen him, how loyalty had made me blind. Not anymore. I reached for his phone, unlocked it carelessly, and scrolled through his messages. My chest tightened as I saw her name. Lena. Message after message, tiny fragments of intimacy, of laughter, of hotel rooms that weren't mine. The most recent one burned itself into my mind. Asterisk, can't wait to see you again. Same hotel. Asterisk. I took screenshots, each one a heartbeat of betrayal, and sent them quietly to my own email. My fingers didn't shake, they moved with purpose. When I was done, I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I lay there listening to him breathe, whispering softly to myself. Asterisk, you wanted to keep souvenirs, Adam. So will I. Asterisk. The room felt smaller, the air sharper, but for the first time, my heart felt strangely clear. Tomorrow, I told myself, I wouldn't just be his wife. I'd be his consequence. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. No screaming, no begging, no scenes, just answers. I dressed neatly. Beige blazer, hair tied back, faint but deliberate perfume. My hands didn't tremble as I drove across town to the address I'd found in one of their messages. A small marketing firm, modern glass doors, friendly receptionist. I smiled and introduced myself as a potential client. It was easier than I expected. People rarely question a woman who looks like she belongs. When she appeared, Lena, I recognized her instantly. Effortless confidence, the kind that comes from always getting what you desire. Young, polished, lipstick too perfect for a Monday. I studied her like a piece of art I didn't remember buying. You must be Lena, I said, soft but deliberate. I've heard so much about you. Her brows lifted slightly, cautious curiosity flickering in her eyes. Oh, from Adam, she asked. Yes, I replied. My husband talks about you a lot. Almost immediately, her face drained of color. Shock, confusion, then something like shame passed through her all at once. That's when I knew she hadn't expected to be found. She froze, blinking fast, her polished smile starting to crack. I didn't know he was married, she stammered, voice small now, stripped of the confidence she had walked in with. I tilted my head, pretending to believe her, though I'd heard that line too many times. Didn't know? I asked gently. Then how do you explain the birthday card? I pulled it out from my purse, like a weapon wrapped in paper, and placed it on the table between us. Lena's eyes widened. Her lips trembled, her hand rising instinctively toward her chest. He told me he was separated, she whispered. The word separated rolled off her tongue, as if it could soften the ugliness of the truth. I let out a small laugh. Not cruel, just tired. Separated men don't come home for dinner every night, I said. That shut her up. The office fell silent, save for the faint hum of a printer in the distance. She looked down, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. For a fleeting moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered every lie he had told me, and I knew I wouldn't carry the weight of his choices anymore. I wasn't there to comfort her. I was there to make sure neither of them mistook my silence for weakness again. I leaned closer across the table, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Don't worry, I said with a faint smile. I'm not here to scream or make a scene. I just wanted to see the woman who writes thank you notes for breaking vows. Her breath hitched, her shoulders folding inward as if she were shrinking under the weight of the truth. The card lay between us, its soft colors mocking her just as they had mocked me. She tried to find words, but none came. I stood, smoothing my blazer, heart steady, unrushed, unshaken, just steady. You should know, Lena, I added gently. I'm not angry with you. You are simply the story he needed to tell himself to feel alive. Her eyes lifted, wet and uncertain, as if seeking forgiveness I wasn't giving. I offered a small nod, the kind you give before walking away from something already buried. Stepping into the sunlight, the card still in my hand, the warmth hit my face. The day was bright, almost too bright, yet I'd never seen anything so clearly. Betrayal had a face now, and it wasn't just his. I got into my car, rolled down the window, letting the wind whip through the silence. One conversation remained, and I intended to control every word of it. That evening, I set the table as if nothing had happened. Candlelight, soft music, his favorite wine beside the plates. I wore the dress he once said made me look like trouble. Funny how right he had been. When Adam walked in, his expression flickered. Surprise, suspicion, maybe even relief that I hadn't packed my bags. You cooked, he asked, voice hesitant, searching for the trap he was sure awaited. Yes, I said, smiling. I thought we should celebrate endings. He hesitated, then sat, trying to read me like a stranger at a poker table. I watched him chew slowly, pretending all was fine. Every movement, every bite, every sip of wine, it was like watching someone dig their own grave, one polite gesture at a time. When the silence thickened enough to slice, I slid the card across the table. It landed softly near his fork, but the sound might as well have been thunder. He looked down, froze, then lifted his eyes to mine. I could almost see his thoughts scrambling, searching for escape. You know, I said calmly, I met Lena today. The fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate. You what? He stammered. I took a slow sip of wine, smiling. She's lovely, polite, and apparently very naive. She told me you said you were separated. My tone was light, conversational, as if I were sharing a recipe. His face went pale, jaw tightening, hands fidgeting near the wine glass. Nora, please, he started, but I cut him off. Don't bother, I said, leaning back in my chair. I'd already sent her the screenshots, and HR had them too. These days, workplace affairs weren't brushed under the rug anymore. I watched the color drain from his face as the words hit him. He blinked rapidly, mouth opening and closing like he was running out of lies to hide behind. You're ruining my career, he said finally, his voice trembling with disbelief. I tilted my head, studying him, The same man who used to lecture me about loyalty, now looking like a child caught stealing candy. "No, Adam," I said softly. "You ruined your marriage. I'm just cleaning up the evidence." His mouth fell open, but no words came out. The silence between us was almost poetic. I stood, feeling a quiet power rise within me. I poured the rest of my wine down the sink, the red swirling away like something finally being washed clean. He watched me, broken, small, and still clinging to the illusion of control. "Dinner's over," I said quietly. "You should start thinking about what's next." "I already have." He stayed seated as I walked past him, his voice cracking behind me. "Nora, please. I made a mistake." I paused in the doorway and turned just enough to meet his eyes. "You made a choice," I said simply. "Mistakes are accidents. You knew exactly what you were doing." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The candles flickered between us, their flames shrinking and stretching as if they could feel the tension in the air. It was strange. I didn't feel heartbreak anymore. Only distance. I looked at the man who had once been my home and saw nothing I wanted to return to. The silence pressed against my chest, but it didn't hurt, not the way it used to. I reached for the light switch, ready to end the evening in every possible sense. "You should save your explanations," I said. "You'll need them for HR." His face crumpled, disbelief, anger, and regret colliding all at once. But I didn't wait for a response. When the light went out, the room fell quiet, except for the uneven sound of his breathing. I stood in the hallway, the scent of dinner fading into something bitter and final. Every betrayal needs an audience. And tonight, mine was done performing. Tomorrow, I'd start the real cleanup, not of the house, but of my life. By the end of the week, the fallout had begun. Adam's company launched an internal investigation, and rumors spread faster than the truth ever could. Lena resigned. Adam moved into a hotel near his office, leaving the house heavy with absence. He called every night at first, his voice splintered between apology and self-pity. I stopped answering. I'd learned the difference between guilt and love. One begs for comfort, the other earns forgiveness. The messages kept coming though. "Please, Nora, talk to me. It was just one mistake. You're everything to me." But I'd stopped being everything to anyone but myself. I read each message once, then deleted it. Silence, I discovered, could be louder than shouting. He was unraveling. And for the first time, I didn't feel responsible for stitching him back together. One evening, he called again. I almost ignored it, but part of me wanted to hear his regret. Not for closure, but for confirmation. "Please, Nora," he said, his voice raw. "I made a mistake. You're my life." I took a slow breath. "You should have thought of that," I said, before thanking someone else for betraying me. The silence that followed felt purer than any apology ever could. He tried again the next day, his messages shifting from sorrow to desperation. "You can't just erase us," he wrote. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "*watch me. And I meant it. The following morning, I called my lawyer and printed every message, every screenshot, and the card, that cursed pastel piece of paper that had started it all. She skimmed the evidence, raising an eyebrow with a small, knowing smile. "Judges love paper trails," she said. "So do I." Filing for divorce didn't feel tragic. It felt surgical, clean, necessary, long overdue, the kind of pain that heals because it removes what's rotten. While Adam scrambled to salvage his reputation, I was busy reclaiming mine. I changed the locks, the bank passwords, the story. I stopped being the woman who waited for explanations. I became the woman who left proof. Each night, the house grew quieter, but it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful, like stepping into a space that finally fit your shape. I slept through the night for the first time in months, no longer haunted by questions I already had answers to. Freedom, I realized, doesn't always arrive with a smile. Sometimes it walks in wearing heartbreak's ashes. The official papers arrived on a Thursday morning, crisp and final. My name stood alone again. Not half of a pair, but whole. I stared at the signature line for a moment, then signed with a steady hand. No tears, no trembling, just clarity. The envelope sealed with a soft press, like closing a door on a life that had ended long before I admitted it. That night, Adam tried calling once more. I watched the screen light up in the dark, his name glowing like an echo from another life. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I had given him truth, consequence, and silence, the three things he had always underestimated. He wanted control. I gave him distance. He wanted mercy. I chose peace. As I crawled into bed, moonlight spilling across the sheets, I realized the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt mine. Every wall, every corner, every quiet space carried my name again. For the first time, I wasn't the wife he'd betrayed. I was the woman who refused to be erased. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of something cleaner, stronger, entirely mine. Months passed, and time did what it always does: soften the edges without erasing the scars. My birthday came again, the first I'd spent alone in years, and I chose to celebrate it quietly. A small cafe on the corner, sunlight pouring through the window, the smell of roasted beans and cinnamon in the air. I ordered my usual and sat by the window, the world moving gently outside, without urgency. For once, I wasn't waiting for anything or anyone. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope, not from Adam, not from anyone else, from me. I had written it that morning, sealing it with the tenderness I used to reserve for others. I opened it slowly, smiling at my own messy handwriting. Asterisk, happy birthday, Nora. Thank you for being your own reason to rise. Asterisk. Simple words, but they landed deeper than I expected. I felt the sting of tears, not from sadness, but from finally being proud of the woman staring back at me in the cafe window. Just then, Clara walked in, a friend who had held me up when I thought I couldn't stand. You look peaceful, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. How does it feel? I smiled, stirring my coffee gently, the steam rising like a quiet promise. Like I finally threw away the wrong card, I said. Clara smiled, a smile that comes from knowing the whole story without needing to hear it again. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that exists only between two people who've weathered storms together. I told her about the new place I'd found, smaller, brighter, closer to the ocean. She laughed and said it suited me perfectly, that I'd always needed a space where the air could move freely. You sound like yourself again, she said. And for the first time, I realized she was right. After she left, I lingered a bit, letting the sounds of clinking cups and soft chatter wrap around me. I thought about everything that card had taken from me: trust, peace, the illusion of safety, and what it had given back: clarity, strength, the courage to start over. Life doesn't hand you closure wrapped in ribbons. Sometimes it hands you a wound and waits to see what you'll build from the scar. I finished my coffee, gathered my things, and slipped the new card, my card, into my purse. The other one, the old wound made of paper and perfume, was waiting for me at home, buried deep in a drawer. But not for long. It was time to let even that go. That evening, on my way home, I stopped by the park near the cafe. The air was cool, carrying both endings and beginnings. I walked until I reached the trash can by the bench where I had sat with Adam years ago, the place where we'd planned futures that never quite fit. I reached into my purse and pulled out the old card, its edges soft from being handled too many times. For a moment, I looked at it, remembering the ache it had once carried. Then I smiled, because it no longer had power. I dropped it in, watching it land face up, half hidden beneath a napkin. The words reason to betray barely visible. It felt almost poetic, like leaving a ghost behind in daylight. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the quiet, before walking away. No dramatic music, no tears, no backward glance, just peace. The kind of peace you earn, not find. As I crossed the street, I felt lighter, as if the world had finally exhaled with me. And in that stillness, a thought came to me, not bitter, not vengeful, just true. He thought betrayal was his gift. He didn't realize I'd turned it into my freedom.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.